Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Camper Report. Obviously, today is not a live video, but I am going to bring you who I think will be the top three teams to break out in the NFC next year. Again, in the NFL, next year. Obviously, you have a loaded AFC, so these teams might not make the playoffs that are in the AFC that I name, but there is going to be one team in the NFC that I will name that, let me just lay it out. There could be a lot of breakout teams this year in the NFC that we see breakout because there's going to be no Tom Brady. There's going to be a Cardinals team that is in shambles. There's going to be a huge gap in the NFC. That's why I think the 49ers and Rams will run it. So let's get right to it. Here are my top three teams that will be breakout teams that weren't very good this year, but will break out in 2022 in the NFL. So obviously, at number one, we have got the Detroit Lions. I really like this team. I think they were actually decent last year. I feel like when they brought the pieces together, the Lions were actually a decent team. Now, they had a lot of holes, but they do have the second pick in the draft. They have draft picks. They have a decent quarterback. They have some bright spots in that team. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've got a lot of bright spots on that team to make you look forward. You've got a good, I believe, head coach in Dan Campbell. So we saw last year when they were able to put the pieces together, this team was very good. They've got the 13th most in cap, which around $20 million. Again, this team, biggest need is receiver. Obviously, we saw against, this season, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he was a slot receiver. Other than that, that was their main weakness, was sometimes Jared Goff just didn't have anybody to throw the ball to. No big-name receivers. I expect them to either go get somebody in free agency. Again, the draft it's pretty loaded with receivers, but this team, the free agency market is loaded with receivers. I can name you a few. Chris Godwin. I expect them to make a big run at Chris Godwin, some of those top receivers. But another thing is the Lions, really the top 15 teams in the NFL will all try to land a big star. I mean, free agency this year is loaded. The draft might not be as loaded, but free agency this year is. So I do expect, even though the Lions are 13th most, they have $20 million right now in cap space. They could probably restructure some things. The Lions, I do expect them to go and get a splashy free agent this year, and I expect it to be a receiver. Remember, they need to fix up some things on their defense. But I do expect them to try and go get a receiver. Obviously, we've got Chris Godwin, Juju Smith-Schuster, Devontae Adams is a big one that, he probably won't want to play for the Lions. But you've got receivers that are very encouraging. And the thing that I will say is I think, actually, free agents will want to play for the Lions. Because the thing is you've got a growing team. You've got a team that has a competent or a decent quarterback. He's not great, not good. You've got a team with a fun head coach, a fun team to play with, no pressure. So I could totally see a guy like Chris Godwin, who there's not a lot of pressure on Detroit, saying, hey, I want to go there. They can give me the money, and I don't get a lot of pressure, and I'll be the star. I'll be the number one receiver there. So, in the aspect of, I think Detroit is going somewhere. They are rebuilding, but they are going somewhere. Detroit is a fun team to play for, I feel like. They have an energetic coach. So I think they won't be void. They'll be able to bring in some free agents. I think receiver is one of them. Obviously, let's talk about draft picks. They have the number 2 pick, and then they have the number 32 pick, obviously, for 32nd pick from the Rams, Matthew Stafford trade and everything. They have, if they want to, so I just named one route that they could go. This is the nice thing, is they could go so many different routes because they have draft picks and they have cap space. So there's a few routes. Obviously, I just named the route of the receiving part of it. Now I'm going to rate the route of the draft part. Let's say they try to go and get a receiver in the NFL draft. Let's see, there is actually some very good receivers this draft. And I mean, we'll see right here. We have, let's see here. We have, they could try to go and get with the 32nd pick. You know, you're looking at getting somebody like Jamison Williams from Alabama or Chris Olave from Ohio State. So if they do decide, let's get another young receiver, let's not spend money in free agency on receivers, maybe that's the route they try to go. But there's so many different routes that they can go. They can get Treylon Burks. They got from Arkansas. They can got John Mechie from Alabama. Tons of different routes that they can go here. It's going to be interesting, though. So, very interesting to see what the Lions will do. And if they do decide to go the receiver route in the draft and maybe go and either get a quarterback. Let's say they decide to get a quarterback. There's also a ton of good defense. They need a defensive end. They need a pass rusher, the Lions. Well, there's tons of good pass rushers in this free agent market. I'll talk about this later with the Broncos. Chandler Jones, Von Miller, Jadeveon Clowney, Hassan Reddick. There is a ton of good pass rushers that you could go out and get. So they could also go for that route. So Lions are a team that I think could break out and have all the pieces. I think if they can get a few more pieces this year, they could break out and have a big season. It maybe be a fringe playoff team. Next up, we have got the Dolphins. This team, I think, is the most intriguing team. They got a new head coach in my 49ers former offensive head coach in Mike McDaniels. Again, this team, a lot of people have been talking about. You've got the Miami Dolphins. They're number one in cap space, $63 million. So they're going to be a main player in this free agency. Now, will guys want to go and play with them? I think so. I think especially defensive players. But I think there's a new head coach, Mike McDaniels, supposedly an offensive genius. I think they're a team that could make a big run in free agency. Again, you have, let's see here, most cap space, but also they need a running back. That's their main thing here. But there is a few very good running backs that they could go and get. What does Mike McDaniel's offense hinge off of? It hinges off of running backs. The Dolphins could go the route of getting one in free agency, and there's one big name in free agency that broke out last year, and I don't think he's going to be brought back by the Buccaneers. That's Leonard freaking Fournette. This guy is... So, I mean, he was very good last year, all I'm going to say. I mean, if you can go and get Leonard Fournette, I would try to go get him. Obviously, there's Melvin Gordon, there's Philip Lindsay, Cordell Patterson is also in there. So, those are a few names that, like, I mean, Leonard Fournette, like, come on, that's a big name right there that they could sign in free agency. So that's another thing that could happen. Obviously, the Dolphins have got the 29th, 50th, and 100th picks. So they're pretty, I mean, they're going to be looking towards, I do wonder if they're going to trade up in this draft, but they also need offensive linemen. That's a big one. But the thing is like, they could be big players in, Brandon Scherf or Teron Armstead are also free agency. And this is why this free agent class is such a big free agent market, because there's so many big names. Teron Armstead, maybe they go get a run at him. I mean, that could be big. Brandon Scherf, he's a guard. So really their whole offensive line, Tua got hit a lot last year. They need stability there. And I think since you do have a later pick, and obviously you want to get a top offensive lineman, maybe you don't pick this draft to do that because you have a later pick, the 29th pick. So I do expect them to be also main players in the free agency, offensive line free agency market as well. So yeah, Dolphins are another team to consider. They need a running back. They need an offensive lineman. Those are a few people that they could pick up. Leonard Fournette, Teron Armstead, guys like that I think are main suitors for them as well. And last but not least, the Broncos. I think this team is very intriguing. They could obviously get Aaron Rodgers. Their biggest need is the quarterback position. But they also have Aaron Rodgers can't do anything if he's going to get killed. Their offensive line was terrible. About the only good position that they have is the left tackle position with Garrett Bowles. He was very solid. So that's about the only position that they don't need to worry about on their offensive line. But everything else they do need to worry about. But the good thing is they're sixth, I think, most in cap space, $38 million. So they can be main front runners for Aaron Rodgers or an offensive lineman. Again, they have the ninth pick, so they can get a top offensive lineman. They could even trade up. Here are a few names for you. Hold on. Here are a few names for you. Tyler Linden. They need a center. Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa is a great name. And then let's see here. Ikem and Akonawu from NC State is a right tackle that they could do. And then this is the one that I'm most impressed about, Darion Canard. He can play both guard and he played both guard and tackle at Kentucky, which then they could move him around and really see what they need. So, I mean, the Broncos, there's a lot of different directions they could go with this ninth pick. They could go and pick up a quarterback if they want to rebuild. They could go and pick, if the Aaron Rodgers thing doesn't pan out, they could go and pick a O-lineman because they really need it all along that line. And then, again, they do need a defensive end. So maybe you could see them going and getting, a guy like, probably not Aiden Hutchinson, because he'll be off the board, but a guy like David Ojabo, who's another really good Michigan defensive end. So, but if they do want to go the free agency route, like I said with the Lions, they could get Von Miller, Jadeveon Clowney. It's pretty loaded with edge rushers. And then there's a few names. Again, another need that the Broncos need are interior defensive linemen. And so they could really, with this ninth pick, you could go so many different ways, but I ultimately do think they're going to try to fix their O-line with this pick, especially if they get Aaron Rodgers, maybe get some new talent, and you have a high enough pick to where you could get a top talent with this one as well. But interior offensive linemen, there's a lot of intriguing prospects here that you could look at. And again, they could go Evan Neal from Alabama, offensive lineman. He could switch to the right tackle position. He's one of the best offensive linemen there. Now, for him, they'd probably have to trade up a few spots. But here are a few interior defensive linemen that they could also get in free agency because they have so much cap that I think they could go after all of these guys, or try to at least. Ndamukong Suh, who had a good year this year. They could go Linval Joseph, Brandon Williams from Baltimore. So there's multiple ways they can take this. But, yeah, I mean, I think the Broncos are also going to be a breakout team, just like these other two teams. If they can just maybe plug the holes, all of these teams have draft picks. All of these teams have a ton of cap to spend. If they can just plug the holes, I think all three of these teams that I named, Lions, Dolphins, and Broncos, could really maybe make a push and be pretty good teams this year. And again, they all have fairly new or first-year head coaches, so let's hope that all works out. So let me know what you guys think. This was a pre-recorded podcast. I'll try to get some guests on. Obviously, I took a week off because, not a lot happening in the NFL right now, but things will start to heat up. I'll start to do lives again. This was just pre-recorded. Wanted to quickly hop on and tell you guys what I think, but we'll see you guys in the next episode. Camper Report signing out, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.